Hi, everyone. It's so nice to have you here at the Melanin Stories Matters podcast and videocast. I'm Melissa Reeves, and I am the producer of this storytelling show that amplifies the voices of Black, Indigenous, and people of color to hear their stories about moments that they had to face racism and how it changed them and formulated to who they are today. Our goal at Melanin Stories Matter is to elevate these voices, these wonderful stories of people that we need to hear so that we can start to conquer racism, start to expand ourselves to be better and celebrate who we are in our diversity. Because it would be really boring if we were all the same. Today, I'm so excited to have Stefanie A. Smith as one of our guests. Hi, Stefanie.
Hi, Melissa. So exciting to be here, everyone.
Oh, you were so wonderful. So Stefanie and I met on Clubhouse and instantly connected through the like-hearted project room. And I think I caught you and Viet Mai as two of the castmates that we just completed our show last Saturday. That was Melanin Stories Matters, and we were tackling environmental racism as a topic.
Yeah, man, that was like a powerful show. Like every of my colleagues on the panel all had very poignant stories, very impactful stories. I really enjoyed being a part of the cast. It was it's just you never know how life intertwines with the external structure and different outcomes for different people for different types of reasons. So yeah. It was just inspiring to hear all the stories.
Yes. So that topic, thank you. And you were wonderful. You were absolutely wonderful. And the topic, environmental racism, I mean, it's rich. There's a lot in that topic. And so the traditional way of looking at it is through the earth, how white supremacy has affected people of color's neighborhoods, dumping arsenic in water and chemicals in the water supply. That's a common environmental racist action. But also with your topic, we talked about family environment and cultural environment. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit of your story, because I thought it was just wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it's my understanding of environmental racism was, it's the systemic practice.
Mhm.
And that systemic practice could also be seen how our cultures are put together by our policies and our social norms. It's our social norms and our beliefs that we bring into our everyday that we act on. And so that's the angle I was coming at it and talking about, particularly how even all the way to the year 2000, the anti-miscegenation laws were still in effect. And anti-miscegenation basically meaning no one of separate colors could be married, or much less, be producing children, right? And so that is very shocking. And if you think about it, what kind of environment would that cause for people that are, being brought up in this type of um, environment where it's okay to make someone feel uncomfortable because of who they chose to love, um,
Mhm.
and just those ricochets of what actually happens when a culture is still trying to hold on to norms that aren't very conducive to quality of life. And
Right.
yeah, and so it's so funny. I ended up doing that. This whole concept of making race and racism and diversity as like a health disparity. I was kind of on this back in 2014 when I was finishing my second master's on the social determinants of multiculturalism. And in that, I was looking at what happens within the personal realm, and then also the external realm of, public spaces and interpersonal spaces as well.
Yeah. Well, why don't we share with the audience a little bit of your background so that they can kind of get familiar with the world you came in, because you have two masters. I mean, your background, your upbringing, I think, was kind of how you got into your studies. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I am a biracial woman. I'm Caucasian and African American. And I grew up in the deep south of Birmingham, Alabama in the 80s. My surroundings and, the watching my family go through trials and tribulations because of racism, staunch racism, was something that basically made me want to study what it's like to be othered. Also made me constantly be a advocate for the voiceless, those that aren't seen, populations that aren't accounted for, and that's why I constantly advocated for the point of view of the person that was biracial, because it's in my opinion, you're sitting right smack dab in between two different cultures, and they're both talking at or over each other. So I found myself in this very different point of view where I could see similarities and differences, and also I found a different way to translate for each group, and that's why I ended up pursuing diversity as my profession. And I own my own diversity consultancy now, and Smith Squared and Associates is the name of the company. And
Awesome.
yeah, and I've trained under some of the biggest and brightest in diversity, because not only have I lived it, but I've also executed it at the corporate level and on a global level as well. And so I figured, why not try to, help out as much as I can. And so I made it my profession.
And thank you. But what's exciting is that diversity, equity, and inclusion are becoming divisions within the corporate world, right? Like this wasn't happening in the 70s or the 80s, was
Yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they called it different things, but I mean, diversity has kind of like diversity has morphed from just trying to uh, hit some numbers or make some numbers to real belonging. And when you actually have a full belonging, or if you think of, this is how I think about it. If you think about it, this isn't Henry Ford's old, but just push a button, do as I say. We're not paying you to think. Today's time, we are paying our employees to think. We are expecting more out of our managers. We are expecting more out of our companies. And the companies are also expecting more out of us in return. If you think about it, we spend most 80% of our lifetime in our work. And so companies that have found the ability to not only have diversity divisions, but really speak the talk and walk the walk alongside it. There's a lot of companies that are just doing it to check off the box, but yet you're seeing the high turnover. You're seeing, the poor numbers when it comes to new product rollout, because if you fully understand your audience, or if you fully understand your client base, and you fully understand your staff are going to want to go 110% and go
Mm-hmm.
the extra thinking, because they feel supported, in comparison to companies that are, I'm just here to punch the clock and not do what I really want to do. Or even a lot of companies are losing out. They're churning out good talent that could stay and develop and really flourish with the company,
Yeah.
but yet expecting the same results from a different type of person is just asinine. And so in this work, helping companies really understand why does it matter to really understand culture, and how that culture um, interplays within your companies, and how that can be turned to an executive, return on investment for the company long term, in comparison to like, well, I don't know. and then becoming
Well,
obsolete.
well, I mean, in each, it's so true. But like a company like, let's say you're Coca-Cola, right? Like, there are different markets that buy that product, and you need to understand them, and to have that diversity represented within your own employees is important.
Absolutely. Because then you find
Yeah.
insights. I mean,
Yeah.
having that diversity already represented in your own employees, that's going to help you understand the consumer base a lot more and make the products a little bit, are the services tailored to specifically to that population through insights that you find out
Mhm.
just by having, for example, let's say we're rolling out KFC in Zimbabwe,
Mhm.
and yet the whole team are Eastern European, right?
Mhm.
However, it would be a big misstep if we didn't listen to George, who we just hired. He's originally from Zimbabwe. And instead of listening to George, we've decided just to put the, Southeastern European team in there, and they just replicate something that they've done in there, in Europe. It worked in Europe, it should work in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Um,
Cookie
and then it
cutter it.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like there's nuances that happen in
Mhm.
other cultures.
Mhm.
And then a lot of places now are looking to the equity part. Not only
Mhm.
just like the belonging or the race, but most likely a lot of companies are moving towards pay equity and looking what does it look like for um, when it comes to practices, policies, procedures on what is succession planning for the company. If we're all constantly, on a referral type basis, how can and we need to have, more people of color in our companies. How can we look at the candidate, the job description? How can we write that differently to get a different result? Instead of just like, well, you can't find them. Shucks, we tried.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, walk the talk, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's so interesting though is like when you and I were working on your story and finding you had so many. You had
Oh yeah.
so many moments where I remember you said I wasn't white enough and I wasn't black enough at times.
Yeah, that's the plight of the biracial person. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, on Clubhouse, I found so many very therapeutic rooms that actually
Hmm.
allowed people from multiple different combinations of biracial
Hmm.
literally be heard and understood. And I heard that a lot. I wasn't, black enough. I wasn't Korean enough. I wasn't white enough. Just having those conversations normalized it, in comparison to throughout my childhood being kind of like, I'm prepared to go into these different environments because I was brought up in nothing but white culture. So therefore, I didn't know the cultural norms. Um, I didn't know my history. I didn't know anything about my culture.
Your
It wasn't.
father's side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I actually had the time to like really dive into myself and my culture and my the people of color that have come into my life. So and I hear it in other stories of how that rub was, what the tensions were, when other family members said certain things, but clearly, didn't pause or didn't stop or didn't hide any feelings of feeling any different type of way,
Hmm.
in comparison to some people not having the words or not being able to push back or not feeling comfortable enough to say, hey, I have a question. So it's a continuum of experiences.
Yeah, family, because I faced it in a different way. I faced it in that I was raised, and I love my family, but a lot of them were from Oklahoma and pretty racist, pretty racist, and it didn't feel right. So, I can relate and they drop a word and you're just like, oof, that didn't feel good. And then coming into who you are as an adult, that systemic stuff, sometimes you have to fight it off to get it away, because standing up to your family on something like that, it's not always easy. It's not always easy.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a white ex-Alabama state trooper grandfather, which, when our very first, run in with Mike Brown and all that stuff, literally conversations would go very tense real quick. And then there was times that I felt obligated to try to ask for, what's your opinion on this? And then still to this day, sometimes you're kind of like, well, do I really want to upset the apple cart this far down the road? But it's also something that you're constantly kind of like, I feel obligated to say something. So
right.
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard sometimes, and that's another division that I'd love to like maybe look into, like having the white, black, blue, brown blood. I don't know what they call it nowadays, but just another division, north, south, white, black, blue blood and civilian blood, or, it's just another,
Yeah. Well, your story was titled, was it Cultures Collide?
Yeah.
And it was really well done. And we're going to be posting. So if you go to our YouTube channel and you go to Melanin Stories Matter, we host all of the content that we've produced. So we've done now 6 shows. And so this was the environmental racism show. And you can also see Stefanie's single. So you can see the whole show if you want to see it. It ended up being quite a lively discussion. So we have interviews after every storyteller, and then we bring all the cast back. And that went on for a good 45 minutes. I think the audience was very, very engaged with us. And we talked about everything from education system and the prison pipeline. And your input being that you have lived these worlds simultaneously, and how it affected you was, I think, a really rich element to the conversation.
Excellent. No, I can't wait. I can't wait to see the playback. And some great conversations. Looking forward to seeing them and promoting and doing this some more. There's a lot of stories that I feel like need to be elevated, and the more people hear the stories, the more it's normalized, instead of being like, oh no, that didn't really happen.
Right.
And we're gaslighting a whole society.
Well, you had so many stories that you did. I mean, like, I could be like, oh my goodness, the bathroom scene when you were scrubbing. You want to play that part?
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, but honestly, it's so funny. Like, I was, and now these stories are starting to really be seen in public or normal culture. Right now, I actually, a very similar scene I saw on this show called Them. I think it's like a new series on Prime, and just basically it's this wanting, or to allude to the story when I give the story away, because I don't like giving away the milk for free. Gotta give it out, people. There's this time that this tension of, people are putting onto you what race means to them. And you're like, oh, I didn't see myself that way. And then you start to see how they are putting their negative views. And then you're just like, you try to take it off. And you're just trying to take it off of, because you're not wanting that perception. And even if it's a perception of like how you look. Yeah. So it's something that's very, it's different to be seen in very different views, but not seen at the same time.
Well, people see what they want to see. They see that's something that we can't control, but we can try to change it, right?
So, well, if you think the whole concept of race, exactly. Yeah. Race is a concept that was made up, on how I see you in comparison to, and that's something that the ambiguous community, mostly biracial and and some BIPOC and indigenous, it's having that I can't put you in a box that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And the whole concept of identity is what I say that I am has to correlate with what you see me as. And, having this concept of, well, no, I'm white, or for example, Americans, not Americans, but, the human race didn't really see ourselves. We had to be told until the mirror came, until the mirror was invented, right? So if you would think that concept, when we used to just look out and about, like I would think that I was just the same color as everyone else, in comparison to now's days where I can say that I'm white, but you wouldn't really believe me. And then you would give me a lot of smack because you're like, you're not white. No, come on. No, what are you really? And it's that conflict that a lot of people really don't have they can't really understand. Like, for example, I had a conversation with a man from South Africa, white Afrikaans descent, and we were working on a diversity project, and he was like, well, Stefanie, you can just tell who's colored, who's not, just by looking at them. And I was like, no, you can't just look at someone and just tell what their ethnicity is. And so that's the concept that we got to like help unravel or help people understand that no, race was not a real thing. It was something that was made, and law was made around it to keep certain people away. And then that was what made, different stereotypes and different cultures collide.
Living conditions. I mean, that was covered a lot in the show, right?
Oh, yeah.
The redlining. We had a story where, there were poor families literally living in a landfill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's because white supremacy has segregated and said we don't have to give the poor people as much attention because we're over here creating our happy white world.
Right. Yeah. Well, we took it from everyone first, and now we want to keep everyone out of it because we think that we're better than, and we'll keep the trash over there, literally and figuratively, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's just those policies that were made to try to, and if you think about it, our policies make our societies, and our societies reflect, our concepts, our beliefs, our norms. And so if we normalize that, and if you think about it, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, over time, the normalization of treating people of color as subpar, that normalization has now come to the point of like, come on, you're the problem, instead of where it was back in the day. Literally, the forms of racism were so overt that literally they used to take pieces of our bodies and our limbs from hangings because they felt as if they perceived there was magic with it. Or they wanted a souvenir from, these were forms of entertainment back in the day. And so now we've moved from that brute mentality to understanding where the bias comes in and how it even, has stemmed from very different beliefs of trying to keep things pure, which we also understand that even some laws that were made to try to make science backing. It's just so crazy. A lot of people are just so accepting, and this is what I spoke of to my story too. Like I had to do the hard search and do the research and find out the truth in comparison to just thinking like, oh, well, that's not how it really happened. And I encourage others to as well, because what we are being spoon-fed, what we think is history, is half the time isn't the history. And that's what the biggest fight is those who write the books, or back in the day, those who wrote who can control
the history books.
Control the
Lies
Family,
My
Control the
Teacher
Mystery.
Told Me is a good book to start getting the fight. Because that's the thing is that, when it comes to race, there is just, we as humans, just everyone does it. I mean, we want to put people in a little compartment, little box, and then have all these narratives tied to it instantly that come up that we're floating around in our head.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's only
And
one
that's where
narrative.
microaggressions should happen, right? Grab your purse a
Right,
little bit more. There's a person of color because I was told really early that that's danger.
right,
It's
right.
bullshit. Is what that is. It's
And
like
then it
not
was
true.
perpetrated through our media, and
Hmm.
how
Movies.
um,
Yep.
people are portrayed, and all of it. And so that's why, a lot of people are really excited to see new images of families that are doing well, instead of
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
the stereotypical character
Hmm.
for, a person of color in a movie. I don't know. I just feel like we're being a little bit more reflective of what's really out there in the world, instead of just, you know, making people aspire to just one narrative, and also understanding that there's room for more than one narrative. That, nothing happens in a vacuum.
Right. And so that kind of feels hopeful, what you just said. That because like when everything happened last year, the series of events that we saw under the police brutality, I was talking to Brianna and I was like, it's like there's been a rip in consciousness and now people are ready to tear it open, and I think the Black Lives Matter words and mission really like, because there was a global reactions to
Right.
what we were witnessing. And Melanin Stories Matter was born because of what we were witnessing. And so maybe we've got so far to go. So far to go. What would, as we're going to wrap up, what would be, as a diversity expert, what is something that you would like us as a collective whole to do to keep moving forward in the right direction?
Oh wow.
I know, easy question.
I think us as a collective, what we can do is constantly challenge ourselves and our thinking. Like, if I and really dive into the thinking when the places that we feel like we don't need any help.
Mm,
For example, if you feel like you've experienced racism, that you don't need to dive into this type of information, or you don't need to learn anything else more about it, then that's an indicator to me that you need to learn more about it, because you've stopped wanting to educate yourself about it.
right.
I definitely would just try to challenge us to understand that there's more than one side to every story,
Hmm.
and trying to hear the different narratives, to put together all the different pieces,
Hmm.
before we make any type of judgment.
Hmm.
um
To
yeah, and then just
listen.
educate, and just give each other grace, a little bit
Yeah.
of grace too.
Listen. That's the thing, is listen to the other person. Just listen. See their heart, not their skin. That's what I'm about now. It's just because I was numb to it. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't question anything. It was like social studies of the Midwest. Oh, it must be true. And it
Right,
wasn't,
right.
right?
And I didn't know to challenge it either until I saw uh that it was safe to ask questions.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like down south it wasn't safe to ask questions. Um, I used to say I turned into a chameleon for safety. I would blend into my environment. If it was a white environment, like, hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
picking up. I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
like go along with you.
Yeah.
And if it was a biracial environment, I'd feel more at home. Or if it was African American environment, I feel like more home. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of
Well, I love that you've taken your life and made it a huge passionate movement for other people to learn from. I mean, I just applaud you. I'm so glad we met. Like,
likewise. It was fun.
yeah,
It was very
yeah.
it was very much fun to be part of the cast. And
Well,
yeah, my writing style, like, there was a lot of different renditions. And yeah, I just have to say thank goodness for all those writing um circuits and stuff, and the different courses I took in my different graduate degrees because, ooh, I kind of finished that maybe 40 minutes before we went live.
You were still doing tweaks.
Like,
Well, that's the
yeah,
journey though.
like, any writer, like, it's never good enough. You can always
Oh,
change it.
well, that's what I love about storytelling, though, is like these are curated stories. So we worked really, really hard to find the moments and make the mind movie for the audience so that they could see and step into your shoes and see what your world was like. And you did it really well. You know, I still am thinking about scenes within your story on a lot of the stories, all the stories actually. So it was great. And the joy of it is that you will tell it differently every time. You will tell it differently every time, and you'll add new scenes to it, and you'll take out other scenes and whatnot. But you were really fantastic to work with, so
Thank
thank you.
you.
And you're sticking around because you're
Yeah, the
stuck with
Band-Aid
me.
has been ripped. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do it
All
again.
right. Well, Stefanie, thank you again for your participation in the show, your energy, all you're doing. Again, Melanin Stories Matter. You can check us out on social. We're trying to be everywhere that we can. YouTube is a really great spot right now for people to see the videos and the singles. So like us, share us,
Yeah.
thumb up, yeah, thumbs up. But
Thumbs up.
thumbs up. But I just, again, thank you again. Thanks for being on the podcast, vlogcast, and let's
Thank
get your
you.
story amplified.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And if anybody is interested in any diversity services,
Yep.
smith-squared.com, and love to help you out. And
That's awesome.
can't wait for the next episode of the Melanin Stories.
Yes, that will be August. We're going to be doing Growing Up BIPOC. So
Oh,
we will be,
nice.
I know, I think you might have a few stories.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Excited.
And then in November or in October, we will have Indigenous Honor, where we'll have all Indigenous storytellers, Native Americans. So it will be really powerful. I love it. I love this work.
I can't wait to hear their stories.
Oh, they're beautiful. So thank you. And we are going to sign off for another episode and go forth and be anti-racist.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you.